Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the stream. I apologise. Apparently, there's no chat at the moment. I've been trying to sort it out, but it's been because I've had to reset everything up, and I've not had any chance to actually kind of work stuff out. I apologise. I can't seem to get the chat working at the moment. I'll quickly see if I can find it. No. I don't think it's going to work, unfortunately. I hope everyone's well. It's been quite a few weeks, so apologise for the lack of streams lately. Just one thing or another, it's just been a little bit crazy. So chat should be down below or to the side or wherever it happens to be and all that kind of stuff. So I had a bit of a rush today because trying to set stuff up and all that kind of thing. Because I've been working on my motorbike, which I've just discovered is a complete and utter bastard to work on because apparently Honda don't deem it worthy enough to actually kind of do a whole bunch make things easy for you. So everything is packed in tighter than God knows what in that motorbike. So to get to the starter motor, I have to take the seat off, I have to take the fuel tank off, I have to take the air filter box completely out, and that's where I got a bit stuck. So I've just kind of wasted a day. And trying to take the fuel tank off, oh my God, they had this thing which they laughingly called the quick release valve on the high pressure fuel hose, and there's these two little tabs that you have to try to get to, which are kind of hidden right inside the goddamn motorcycle, and it's not worked, and I don't know what to do with it, but I've shoved it all back together, it's working again, but I didn't get the jobs I wanted done, which is a real shame. Oh dear. See where we are with the chats. Finally, Mardi Gras Massacre is getting a proper release. Yes, I have it on pre-order. I think it's June. I think it comes out. So I'm looking forward to that. Richard says Free Jack wasn't such a bad film. Dennis Hopper and Mick Jagger were both in Free Jack, and they were both in Running Out of Luck as well. They must have liked them close together or something. Okay. Filmed them close together. I didn't like Free Jack. I particularly didn't like Mick Jagger in it because, oh my God, did he ham it up. And not in a good way, unfortunately. Oh, crikey. Good evening, Blue Iris. Good evening, Richards. We got a few in there. I believe I saw Grobnob in there earlier, which is nice to see. Yeah. So just one hell of a day trying to sort a whole bunch of stuff out. Because I've reset my computer, my Blu-ray software has been a real bitch to set back up again. They do not make it easy. It's one of the things that really pisses me off with Blu-ray is you using it on a PC. It gets very expensive because you're having to spend about 50 or 60 quid on bloody software, which is kind of outrageous. Plus, they don't give you the permanent sort of install file yet. Every time you have to go cap in hand and go, can you please give me a download link or reset my my code? It's like, what a pain in the ass that is. So eventually I did manage to get to see Adult Fairy Tales, and it's awful. It's pretty bad. I had my friend over, and I kind of showed her the Blu-ray, and she went, "Oh, we're gonna watch that," and then she got terribly bored. Oh dear. What did I think of performance? It's been a very long time since I've seen it, but I think Mick Jagger was better in that than he was in Free Jack for sure. Free Jack's a very, very of its time, isn't it? I think it's one of those movies that is just like, you can tell, the era it was made in. It's just got that look and that feel. It feels, yeah, it's been a very long time since I've seen it, but it's one of those films that just everything about it feels odd. And I did see it at the cinema, and there's that bit where Mick Jagger sticks his head out of his little tank and goes, "Let's do it." And it was all a little bit kind of like, ooh, yeah, okay. So I also got Satan's Little Helper, which I started watching. Um, it's one of those films. There's a lot of interesting little things going on in it, but it is one of those films like the whole. I guess it was shot. I'd like kind of on shot on tape. It doesn't look cinematic particularly, but the story's kind of interesting. And but I haven't watched all of it yet, so I can't really comment on it too much. I just kind of watch it just to make sure the DVD actually kind of works apart from anything. So that's been kind of fun. So yeah, a few things. I've got a few more films sort of coming along. I've got Jackass Forever coming along at some point. But yeah. Blue Iris says I haven't watched Adult Fairy Tales. Well, it was only $4.99. Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, it's worth a watch. It's very goofy, and it wasn't quite the feel that I was expecting. Having gone with kind of New Adventures of Snow White, I expected it to feel a lot more like that, and it doesn't. It's a very, very cheap production. To the point that they actually have sets that look like kind of panto sets, which might have been kind of mitigated a bit when it was, on VHS and stuff like that. But yeah. Hello, Simon. Seriously, Glenn, do we have to do a watch along of Running Out of Luck one week? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm sure we can do something like that. Yeah. Oh, dear. But yeah, fine. As Richard said, Mardi Gras Massacre. That's another one which is going to be coming along, which I'm kind of looking forward to seeing on a release that has a bit of love shown to it, because I had a really kind of scrappy version of that. But William Mezzo, I believe the lead actor. It's one of those films that is a little bit of a guilty pleasure. Not that I'm terribly inspired to watch it a lot, but I do kind of enjoy his performance in that when I do get round to watching it. Have you heard of a film called X? I have heard a bit about it. I would like to see that, actually. It's one of those things that it would be nice to get around to at some point in the not too distant, if you know what I mean. I've been trying to sort out my holidays as well, and it's just God damn it. Every time I get round to it, it's like kind of like there's been complications. So I'm hoping I'm going to get a holiday. It's just what shape it takes, because at the moment it's looking like I'm going to end up doing a holiday on my own, which would be a little bit of a pain in the butt. But there you go. Yeah. I might have to see if my brother wants to go. Because that could be kind of fun. But I want to take my camera and I want to go like taking photos and all that kind of stuff, which would be kind of fun. Oh dear. But as soon as I get my Blu-rays kind of up and running, I'll be watching Island of Death. I think that's one I've got to watch. Satan's Little Helper. I've got a few. I was about to watch Soylent Green again last night, but for some reason the Blu-ray software was just playing up. I'd finally got the codes for it and all that kind of stuff. It's all authorized, and it's like, for whatever reason, it wasn't working. Maybe I just needed to reset my computer. Haven't tried it since then. But yeah. So I guess in news and stuff like that at the moment, Netflix. What a clusterfuck that's turned out to be, huh? It's a great kind of like wake up call, but not many people are really going to listen to it, unfortunately. But it's one of those things you go, Netflix seemed unassailable for such a long time and seemed to be kind of like looking like they were going to be around forever, and now it's looking ropey to say the least. And one does wonder what will happen to all the bits and pieces. I imagine they'd get sold on if it does get liquidized, but you know, all that stuff just, you know, I mean, Netflix is a bit of a weird one in some respects because, as far as I'm aware, it's been a long time since I've been on Netflix, but you don't get to own anything, if you know what I mean. It's all kind of like, you know, part of the rental and that kind of stuff. But it just goes to show, I mean, you know, are Amazon Prime going to change or disappear or any of that kind of stuff? I don't know. Island of Death is a film with something to offend everyone. Yes, it is. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, like I say, you know my opinions on the director and his behaviour towards me, but it's an interesting one because it's designed to push buttons, and it does have that sort of kind of underlying commentary. Not to say that it's the deepest thing in the world or anything, but it does have that underlying kind of commentary going on in it, which is fascinating to see in such a weird film. But it's I like the film, I have to say. I wish I still had my review of it, though. Because it was kind of like, I mean, I'm more saddened than angered by the whole kind of affair, but yeah. Netflix and other streaming services need to concentrate on making entertaining shows, not pandering to the woke mobs. I don't think it's even that, to be honest with you, Simon. I don't, I don't think it's about wokeness. I think it's literally about a business model, and that's always going to be the problem. Now, everything's shifted when it comes to all this kind of stuff, which is why, you know, the death of physical media is one of those things which gets kind of it's been heralded more loudly and often than ever. You've got that whole kind of thing with this sort of you won't own anything and you'll enjoy it kind of attitude that was displayed, and I can't remember the exact source of it, but it's like a World Trade kind of conference or something like that. But that kind of attitude that you won't own anything, and when you look at things like Netflix, when you look at a big company like that, and it could go away. When you look at Amazon, and Amazon is going to get to a point where, you know, governments are going to eventually say you're going to have to break it up, especially with the way things are going politically speaking, because we've got too many companies that are too big to fail. And does anybody really want Amazon, for instance, to be too big to fail? As a you know, because one of the tricky things that Amazon has done over the years is they've undersold everything to try and kill the competition, so they only game in town. And if that goes away for whatever reason, then there'd be problems, massive problems. The whole supply chain is kind of like becoming more and more funneled through companies like Amazon. So yeah, what do you do about that kind of stuff? It's this sort of hyper capitalism kind of thing of the winner takes it all. But when the winner's got it all, then how do you have any leverage against a company like that? And what motivation do they have to serve you? Because, you know, at that point, they're taking your money, like it or not. Surprised the BBFC passed it uncut. What? Island Death. It's I mean, it's offensive, but it's not kind of like, you know, obscene. There's the one scene with the goat which could potentially get that kind of way, but it's all sort of implied. It's not, you don't really see anything. It's one of those funny things, isn't it? Some people see a lot more in a film like that than is actually in there. And A Serbian film was definitely one of those cases that people saw a lot more in that film than was actually in the film. Grobnov says Island of Death doesn't have anything to offend me, which says more about me than the film, I suspect. I struggle to get offended by Island of Death, but I can absolutely see it does have plenty to offend. Glenn, do you think that physical media is over? No, I don't think it will be entirely. I think it's just going to become a much more niche thing. The hardest thing, the biggest challenge, is making sure that the technology survives. That's the tricky part. Because unlike VHS, DVDs are and particularly Blu-rays players are a lot more prone to breaking down, in my opinion, than a video cassette player. Those lasers. It's when they stop making those lasers. And you see the same sort of thing with tape decks. You can buy tape deck mechanisms. There's one company in the world, I believe now, that actually makes them. And unfortunately, they make the cheap and nasty ones, because there's not an awful lot of money in making high-end ones. But, if there's enough interest, then people, to keep it going, then people will still make them. They'll just become a bit more expensive, is all. Sky seem to have dumped their daily movie premiere. Yeah, the thing is, the bigger the companies get, the lazier they get. You look at like the communications companies in America in particular, and they don't have any competition, particularly. Actually, no, I'm thinking more the telecommunications, Verizon and that kind of stuff. They don't have, because they've sectioned the country off, so they've got their own areas, so they don't have to compete. Which you kind of look at, you go, that's very anti-consumer. Can sound like the old communist again. That's capitalism now. It's kind of worrying, to be honest with you, when you look at it, because the quality of service will deteriorate, your options will deteriorate, because they've only got an interest in making something more attractive if they have to worry about competition. And Amazon's barely got any competition. Most of the streaming services don't have any competition. YouTube doesn't really have any competition. Not that's worth talking about. Facebook, Twitter, these monolithic corporations that control so much of our lives, or at least kind of like have a foot in our lives. It's a little bit concerning, to say the least. Dear. Island of Death. I've heard of goat curry, but not goat worry. Tape decks with a fixed magnet for tape decks are old technology is or shall I say outdated technology. It's still supported to a degree. But it's only to a degree. You can still get video recorder parts and all that kind of stuff, but it's getting harder to find that kind of stuff. And I think there may only be kind of one company making video recorders at all at this point. So it's a little worrying when that sort of thing happens. But when you look at it, you've still got kind of old video cassettes of different makes and all that kind of stuff still exist, and are still maintained and fixed and all of that kind of stuff. So, but there's going to be a day when that stops happening, and we have to find another way to kind of deal with that stuff. But the answer isn't, I'll put it all online. It's I don't see a way that giving all control and all ownership to a corporation that may or may not be there in 5-10 years time is going to be a good thing, and I think people are going to start realizing it more when they start losing stuff from things like Amazon and kind of stuff like that. But Google Books did the same thing. They sold many books, not enough to make it viable, but they did. They had customers who'd spent good money on their books, and a lot of those just gone. Gonna have to go. Phone's about to die. Okay, take it easy. One of those things, isn't it? You still get packs of belts for cassette decks. Got a 70s trio deck. They need to fix at some point. I always enjoy watching Techmoan when he fixes his old tech and stuff like that. Be it a video recorder or cassette players or record players or some really obscure kind of format. And it's interesting to see, all the formats that he comes up with. He's got this background music kind of thing going on, machine that he's got in, and he fixes, and he'll find they're like super rare cartridges to put in them and that kind of stuff. You're drinking little cider. Wow, okay, that's classy. I haven't even taken a sip yet, but it's ruby red. Blue Iris says thinking about dumping Netflix and trying Shudder. To be honest, why not? Why not? At least if you're on stuff like the Arrow subscription and that kind of stuff, you can actually sort of buy copies and then they're yours if you particularly like a movie. Their model is actually a lot better in some respects, but it is still relying on the platform that is Amazon. And I would be much more reassured if you could actually just download the damn thing. It's not the same as having the physical media, because you've got the structure of the physical media with all the bits and pieces, the extras and all that kind of stuff, and not least to say the fact that you've got it on a format that's not going to get lost. I mean, Vladimir Putin isn't going to hack your computer and delete your Blu-rays. Or if your computer goes, kind of up in smoke, you have hard drive errors, that kind of stuff. I've been testing one of my hard drives that had been failing, and there's nothing on it, but I have seen it kind of like coming up with needing to be checked at startups and stuff. So I've got to week that thing out, and then at some point I've got to buy myself a couple more hard drives to shove in there, because I've got to make sure that all my digitized VHS and stuff like that are in good condition. Lampy, how do you know more movies? Do you know more movies like Extro and The Jar? I don't think there are any movies like Extro. Extro's like a lot of movies, but not a lot of movies are like Extro. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, I think looking at some of the sci-fi on the Video Nasties list is always a good place to start. Yeah, because there's a few on there which are rather good. Seminoid is quite a good one, which is sort of a similar kind of vibe, but with a bit of Space 1999 thrown in. Yeah. There's a few sort of knocking around. Yeah, I guess. Oh, where are you? Let's find it. It's up here somewhere. There we go. You could argue that Contamination is kind of in that sort of ballpark, although it's a bit sort of it's a bit more rough and ready. I mean, I like Extro. There's just so much going on in that film. It's absolutely bonkers. Extro films are guilty pleasures of mine. I mean, the third one had some fun stuff going on. The second one was a bit of a mess, but kind of fun nonetheless. You can argue it with the first one that the original Extro is something of a generic film or a derivative film in some respects, because it is taken from E.T. and Close Encounters and all those kind of things. It sort of borrows from those sorts of things. But the other two films also do the same, but more in kind of like slightly different sort of genres, or kind of like eras of films. It's kind of fascinating to break him down in that sort of respect. Getting more like, yeah. Come on, man. Yeah. Inseminoid is very British. It is British, very good. Yeah, Inseminoid's kind of fun. I enjoyed that film. It's for a British film. It's kind of it gets kind of full blooded and does some pretty outrageous stuff. I did kind of like it. The guy from Contamination, McCulloch, is also in BBC's Survivors. He was in quite a few bits and pieces, wasn't he? He was a reasonably busy jobbing actor. Norman J. Warren film. Yeah. Yeah. You haven't seen 3. I mean, 3's hard to get hold of, relatively speaking. It took me a few attempts to get a version that would actually kind of... Because I think I bought one and the DVD didn't work. Eventually, I ended up getting it on VHS. I ripped it from the VHS. X-Ray ripped off Close Encounters. X-Ray 2 ripped off Aliens. X-Ray 3 ripped off Predator. Yeah, you're quite right. But Harry Bromley Davenport always bought something along with it. He's got a very unique kind of style. Dark Angel, the Visitor ripped them all off. There's a lot of borrowing. There's a lot of borrowing going on. X-Ray 3 is out on US Blu-ray. I don't think it was at the time I kind of was looking for it, but I wouldn't mind a decent copy of that. Still waiting for X-Ray, the big one, though. Which looks like it kind of goes along the whole sort of disaster movie kind of stuff. So, could be fun. It could be fun. Whether Harry will actually get it done, I got no idea. Did everyone hear about a Conservative politician watching porn in the House of Commons? Yes, I did hear about that. That guy... You kind of like... or I accidentally... I was going to say come across porn. I accidentally surfed for porn. It's like, no... Google's actually pretty good at kind of shuffling you away from that kind of stuff in general. It's not the first thing that sort of comes up when you Google tractors, is it now? John says, one of the greatest soundtracks from Goblin. Can't watch Contamination without humming on the theme song for weeks. That could be worse. It could be Midnight, John. That stays in your, particularly stays in your head for quite a while. That's all I heard for about the first 2 weeks of when I first got to know Joan. And we were working together in the gallery. That was one of my jobs back in the early time with my current employment was we had to set up this art gallery from time to time. Thankfully, I don't have to do that anymore. Some nasty good effects in the Invasion of the Body Snatchers 78. And I love it. It's my favourite of the Body Snatchers films. I think John would disagree. He would go with the Abel Ferrara one. Which is... His review is very good, by the way. It was... it's always interesting to see that. I sometimes wish I was like John and was just endlessly enthusiastic about every film I come across. I'm not sure what films John absolutely despises. I've never asked him that question. I don't think I have anyway. I must seem like the right negative Nancy in comparison to him. It's not appropriate to watch it at work, but porn is legal, so why the fuss? Because he's watching it at work when he's supposed to be kind of like serving the people. The guy's paid enough money. It's not an appropriate place to be watching that kind of stuff. Quite apart from the fact that, I couldn't do that at my work. You could probably... I can't imagine you'd be able to do it at your work. So why the hell should he be treated any different to, how everybody else should be treated. I have no problem with pornography whatsoever. It's absolutely fine. The people that work in it, I don't feel any need to look down on. And as long as the industry kind of, regulates itself correctly and looks after the people who are working, I've got absolutely no problem with it whatsoever, in whatever stripe that you particularly want, so long as it's consensual and legal. But yeah, don't do it in the House of Commons. Seriously. Oh, crikey. It's not the at work thing, it's in front of it. It is at work as well, to some degree. You're supposed to be there to kind of like, particularly in their job, they're supposed to be doing important stuff, and they're having debates and stuff, and he's sat there surfing. As far as I'm concerned, their bloody mobile phones should not even be in the space. They shouldn't be looking at their mobile phones unless they are picking it up for an emergency. So even if he was just watching bog standard YouTube, no. No. Oh dear, maybe he was sort of he sort of was knowing what he was doing was dark, showing it to women, something like. Yeah, I'd say that's always a possibility. Yeah, he's not the first one that's been caught doing that kind of stuff. The people in America have been, some guys in America have been caught doing that as well. It's always a bit sleazy doing that kind of stuff in public, isn't it? I used to surf porn at a local library I went into. Must have been pretty hardcore because the librarians called the cops and he was busted out of there fast. That's just nasty. It's like, go home, do that stuff. It's like, no, fine. As long as you're keeping it all healthy and, not getting obsessive. It's plain sleazy, yes it is. It is, and he must have known that other people could see. It's not, and unless I don't know. I mean, would it be fair to say that people are so pig ignorant half the time? They're so consumed by the little box in front of them that they kind of forget their social mores. We certainly see that online, don't we? I mean, people act very differently online to how they would act in real life. And maybe it's just an extension of that to some degree. But either way, a little standards, please. Let's have a little decorum, especially in a place that's supposed to demand a certain amount of respect. Makes me laugh, kind of like when they start whining about, not enough respect. You can't be kind of like talking to us like that kind of stuff. And yeah, this is the kind of behaviour that you have to put up with. Alien ripped off Planet the Vampires. The Terror Beyond Space, Dark Star, and Doctor Who, The Ark in Space. Yeah, there's always influences which come and go. This is one of the things with copyright law and stuff like that, where copyright law has gotten to the point that it's being used as essentially it's being weaponized by corporations, particularly. Excuse me. You see it a lot with false DMCAs from kind of like box standard YouTubers and content creators, that kind of stuff, who use it as a weapon. There's this guy that's recently been going around and using that as a way of slapping down people who he finds annoying. And his excuse is like kind of like A, fuck the law, and B, what was it he said? He kind of like he goes, the content's shit. The content that they got is shit. It's like, yeah, you don't get to decide that people's work goes away just because you don't like it. And he was right arrogant little sod. He's just the most smackable faces. He's sat there going, yeah, fuck the law, yeah, I do it because and I enjoy it, and yeah, fuck the law and all that kind of stuff. Then 5 minutes later he's whining that about other things that kind of been thrown in his way, which I sort of looked at and went, yeah, it's fair that you should be pissed off about that, but then kind of like talking about suing and stuff like that, you go, well, so you want to use the law when it's in your favour, but not when you want to kind of break the law when it's in your favour too. Arrogant little sod. It's a real problem with arrogance these days. He wasn't watching Candy Crush, no. Yeah, it could be a porn name, couldn't it, Blue Iris? Oh dear. Uh, I don't know. I try to be civil online. I try to be civil online. I wish more people were. Um, we have a really kind of bad online culture these days. You just have to look at like the crypto bros and all that kind of stuff. These people who seem to think that um, the people out there are just cows to be milked at best, and you see how awfully they treat people, their fans and stuff like that. Yeah, these people are like die-hard fans, and and they just turn around and absolutely stab them in the back at the earliest opportunity, or rug pulling and all that kind of stuff going on with their crypto or their NFTs and all that kind of stuff, and it's a whole kind of NFT sort of thing. I'm looking at what's going on. I watch things like CoffeeZilla and all that kind of stuff, who have an interesting take on it. But it's very prevalent that these people just think that, you know, you're there for them to make money out of. It's just like the corporate mentality, but just in an individual. It's just crazy. It's pretty horrible. I can sort of troll chats sometimes, John, but I wouldn't want to be in wouldn't want to do it to a person's face. No, it's a very different experience, isn't it? I've kind of learned over the years, you know, that when I started doing this stuff, you know, you kind of like don't expect there to be much attention, let alone for the director of whatever film you've just slated to actually get in touch with you. And I kind of learned very quickly from that there's real people out there, and showing a little bit of respect at least is generally a good thing, unless they have absolutely kind of foregone that right by acting like twats themselves. Hello, Adam. Can't join you tonight. Just checking in, catch you on the next stream. Yeah, well, I don't know how long this one's going to be anyway, Adam. We're just kind of like I'm just trying to get things back up and running. Hence why there's no chat. Because for whatever reason it's not working, so I'm going to have to do a private stream or something tomorrow to try and figure that stuff out. I've imported the widget from Streamlabs OBS, but for some reason it's not working. That's probably because I'm not logged in properly through Streamlabs or something like that. I imagine that's the case. Alien was also influenced by Texas Chainsaw. Really? I don't see where you're coming from on that one, but fair enough. if you see a link, it's kind of interesting. I just rewatched Texas Chainsaw again just recently because I tried to watch the remake one. I think it was the first of the remakes, because I watched Texas Chainsaw 3 and 4, then I kind of went, let's just give the remake another try. Oh my god, it was awful. I got just past the credits, and it was the point where the young folk, where all the kids are driving along, and I lasted about 15 seconds into that sequence before I just went, fuck this. I haven't felt that for a long time. It's very rare that I feel that set against a movie. Because there was a whole bunch of the stuff that was going on in it, that, you know, in the intro and all that kind of stuff, that I just kind of went, all right, okay, whatever, because, you know, a lot of the sequels to the original, be it Texas Chainsaw 2, 3, Next Generation, had a lot of the same issues, but this, as soon as those, it's just the obnoxious teens. It's like, can we have some characters that are actually interesting, that are, you know, that you can have some sympathy for? Do they all have to be just there to be immediately hated so we don't have to feel guilty or sad or down when they do actually get murdered. I mean, even the first one, you don't, you get to know those characters a bit, for better and worse. Some of them are a bit annoying. Some of them, certainly Franklin is a deliberately annoying character. But to make him so absolutely awful that you immediately just go, just slice him up. And the dialogue and, the immediate over-sexualization of the characters as well. They're all immediately kind of like on top of each other, dry humping and shit like that. It's like, what the fuck? You liked the Texas Chainsaw Remake. I fucking hated it, Simon. I absolutely despise it. It's right up there with my least favourite movies of all time. I honestly, I don't know how you could like it, but if you found something in it that you like, then whatever. More power to you, buddy. What is fungible? How does one funge? Funge is like it sounds like a fudge sponge. It's to do with I could be kind of misremembering this. Fungible is basically like I think it's to do with uniqueness. So you've got like a £5 note and another £5 note, and they're both kind of like usable. They're swappable. They do the same thing. They're linked to the same kind of system for kind of what they're valued at and all that kind of stuff. And it's something to do with that end of economics, where non-fungible is, it doesn't have any intrinsic value, because there's nothing real about NFTs. There's absolutely nothing real about them. You're essentially paying a lot of money for a receipt that goes to, basically is a link to the thing that you own, but you don't own it. It's bizarre. I honestly, it's like, I mean, even the good stuff, you kind of like look at it and go, how is that worth millions? I don't get it. It's a weird mindset with this stuff. Yeah. All the problems it claims to solve are really just kind of relocating the problems to people like that tit in the suicide forest. But there you go. Hello, Kerry. Yeah, no worries here for a bit late. I was a bit late. Just there's no chat. The chat has gone because I couldn't fix it in time. This whole thing was just been very last minute today, because I just kind of went, fuck it, I just want to do a stream, and I thought it'd be nice to do. I've got connected, contracted for what? Individual specimen being specified, replaceable by another identical item, mutually interchangeable. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to say, did you Google that one? But yeah, NFTs weird and kind of risky. You're so anonymous and stuff. There are ways to be anonymous with that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, it's going to lead to a lot more of your information on the internet. They're talking about like making your health details and stuff like that as an NFT. It does not sound clever to me. I don't think I trust that kind of stuff. I hate this idea that everything's got to be online. Everything's got to be online. It's got to be online. It's got to be kind of like wireless. So, looking forward to the days when they decide to cut all the fibre optics into your houses. That'll be great. And then we're all at the mercy of bloody radio towers that'll get burnt down by some conspiracy theorist. Oh dear. Ridley was obsessed by Texas Chainsaw and wanted to make a version in space. Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't see the link. I'm not saying you're wrong by any means. That's quite possible, but yeah, I wouldn't have identified that in a million years. Or unless I mean, you could argue that the sort of structure of the film kind of works in the same sort of way. But it is so far away. But yeah, it's very weird. Still no better or worse than Bitcoin. Well, it's all kind of linked, isn't it? It's all this blockchain, blockchain technology. You always got to be online. You've always got to be kind of like it's like your games and stuff like that. It's always got to be online. The GTA 6 is start to build a buzz at the moment, but I've got no interest in it because I just know it's going to be bloody awful. And especially when you look at how they handled the remasters. It's like, I'm so glad I've got all the copies down there of the originals. I think there's only one that I don't have, and that was only released on PC, and it seems very hard to get hold of because it was GTA London, and I think that was actually GTA London 1 and 2. And I don't have one of those. But yeah, I've got the originals down there from 1 through to up to 5. So got, yeah. Vice City's always been my favourite. But I didn't have to be online for that, and I didn't have to go out and buy coins and stuff like that. The game was complete in and of itself. So where we are with this kind of stuff now is pretty awful. You get these games that they go, oh yeah, we're going to charge you 60 quid or whatever for this game, and it's like, it's really sort of the it's almost like a teaser version, because then you've got like 15 different bloody other packs that come along with this kind of thing. You need a fucking degree in astrophysics to try and work half this shit out. Sonic at the moment, they've just done a remaster of Sonic, and I kind of look at it, I go, do we need a remaster? The originals are pretty good. I've got them on the PS2. At some point, I want to get myself a Mega Drive, and Sonic could be one of the first games to get. I just don't need so many bloody remakes, especially when they kind of like start fucking about with them. That said, the remake is the remaster or whatever is supposed to be quite good. GTA London was an expansion pack for the original PS1 game. GTA 2 was GTA London 2 was PS2. Was it really? Okay. I mean, I've got the one for the PS1. GTA London 2. I did not realise that was on PS2. I will have to have a look out for that. Frailty. Have I seen that? That rings a bell. Did Steam lead the way in you don't own the physical game? Pretty much. Yeah, I don't think they were absolutely the first, but they were the ones that kind of really codified it. I kind of like GOG at the moment because there's just not that many games on Steam that I want now. It's one of those annoying things. It's like all the games that are coming out, you sort of go, I'm just less and less interested in it. Ubisoft. This will be an interesting thing because Ubisoft is in a bit of trouble at the moment. Their kind of stock prices have gone right down. So I mean, don't get me started on stock markets. One of mankind's worst inventions, in my opinion, and absolutely kept him by the arseholes. But yeah, they're in trouble. Can you imagine if they go away, how many games will go away with it? Now, they can keep the stuff on Steam and stuff like that, but most of their updates and their kind of patches and all that kind of stuff are done through their own sites, their own servers. So, same with Rockstar and things like that. So GTA kind of like 4 and 5 will stop existing at some point. At least kind of like you be able to get the base game in a unmodified version. But it's quite astonishing. I mean, even with the PS3 games that I got, there's some of them require massive updates. GTA 5, is it GTA 5 or is it GTA 6? Has a ton of updates and stuff like that. If Sony go out of business and you can't get to the PS Store, then what do you do about your updates? You're going to have to live with them as they are. All the servers have gone, so you can't really do the whole kind of any of the online stuff anymore. GTA 5 will eventually shut down its servers, probably sooner than you would imagine, because as soon as 6 comes out, they're going to want to go over to that. Games ain't what they used to be. You get the base game. Hopefully it will work on day one. Hopefully. Often doesn't. Wow. I mean, it's like, yeah. So there will be a lot of games that just go away and will be unplayable. It'll be very difficult for people to kind of archive. See, one of the things at the moment is because you've got so many people like Rockstar who have basically pulled the original versions of Grand Theft Auto from the digital shelves. If you bought it, you still own it, yada yada yada. But how long for? I mean, if you lose it on that site for whatever reason, if Steam go away, which is always quite possible, then you're going to lose all your games. Never going to get them. Never be able to play the originals, which is why I'm kind of like, pirate them if you absolutely need to preserve them, because one thing is for sure, the software companies and all those kind of people, very much like in the film industry, just don't really give a shit about archiving. They're only interested in where the next big buck is coming from. And it was devastating for the film industry, for film history. That so many films from early on went away, never to be seen again. Most of them have completely disappeared and will never, ever, ever be seen again. And it's a huge percentage. The films that survived from late 1800s, early 1900s, the films that actually survived to this day are the minority. Speaking of modern remakes being bad, I watched Alice, Sweet Alice again on Slash Bin. It made me realise how badly drawn some modern characters are. Yeah. I mean, it's not to say every movie that's out now, because it's not true. I mean, there are some good movies that do come out, but it's few and far between, and they don't get nearly the love that they actually deserve. What did make me laugh was Ghostbusters 2016. It wasn't on the Ghostbusters Ultimate Edition. It's that 4K Blu-ray, whatever it is, of Ghostbusters 1 and 2 and Afterlife. And Paul Feig was apparently all over Twitter, kind of like stamping his feet. And you kind of go, well, his was a remake, and 1, 2, and Afterlife are not their sequels. It kind of makes sense that box set doesn't have the 2016 one in. Was it a slight from Sony? Possibly. But, Sony kind of got screwed over on that one. Not that I feel sorry for Sony. How is The Patient? Oh, well, it's back together again. I took it apart, right down to the got right down to the kind of like air box for the air filter and all that kind of stuff, and I was looking to try and take that out, and then I kind of went, there's a lot more to do, isn't there? All to change a starter motor. My old Bandit was nice and easy. 2 screws and unbolt the cable at the top. That's job done. Slap the new one in, bolt it all back down again. Easy to go. And all it is that the air filter box needs to be that much higher, and I'd have been able to have done it without any problems. Fucking modern motorbike design is unreal. Ah, dear. Speaking of bad remakes, have you ever seen the 2019 version of Black Christmas? Yes, I have, and yeah, it wasn't terribly good. It wasn't terribly good. You know, there's so many remakes on. I mean, it's not to say that every remake isn't, because obviously, you know, there's plenty of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers or The Thing and all those kind of stuff. There's plenty of good examples of remakes that work really, really well. It's just for the most part, most people do them as a lazy cash-in. When you see the more recent The Thing, you know, sequel, remake, whatever it is, it's kind of, you know, it's a reboot essentially, you know, at the very least. And you see some of the decisions that they made when they were making that film that just utterly killed it. But even if it had the kind of like entirely the filmmaker's way with that film, yeah, I think it would have been a bit like, well, I've seen it before. Because it wasn't really a progression in the story, and that's why I say it's always a bit fuzzy with that one as to remake, reboot, yada yada yada. There's things to kind of suggest either way, but with that particular film, it's just didn't really cover any new ground when it comes down to it. Can I get people's opinion? Phenomena upgrade to Blu-ray, yay or nay? Could be worth it. I don't know what's on the Phenomena Blu-ray, to be honest with you, in terms of extras and that kind of stuff. GB26 is the uncle we don't really talk about. No. And like I say, I didn't particularly hate the film, but there's no way I could say I liked it either. It is very kind of like, well, that happened at best. You know, it's just like it's such a waffy fart of a movie in so many respects. I know a lot of people really, really took against it. I didn't feel that way, but it certainly didn't speak to me in any kind of way to make me like it. It was not terribly good. In fact, to say, was it awful? Not utterly, but you know, you sort of like look at it and go, it's not great either. It's just very, very whatever. And that's probably worse. You know, I can watch Manos plenty of times, but in fact, I've watched Manos more times than I've watched Ghostbusters 2016. I've seen that film twice. I saw it once at the cinema. I've seen it once on DVD. It didn't get any better on DVD. Oh dear. Blue is great quality. Don't know if it's still available, but Arrow box set with the different cuts is great. Okay. I see. That's one of the things I like is when they have the different versions. It's kind of interesting. I have been toying with the idea of upgrading my Dawn of the Dead to the Blu-rays, which would make it about the 5th time I've bought that, or 6th time I've bought that movie. Though I must say I like the Blair Witch revamp that came out a few years ago. I think it was a very compromised film. See, the problem with the Blair Witch Project, remaking it, is it's utterly pointless to remake, because it is a movie that was so much of its time. It was a cultural impact of that time. Nobody had really kind of watched movies, generally speaking, of that nature. Exceptions being things like certain Mondo films and Cannibal Holocaust, which are kind of light on that sort of stuff, but not less so with the Mondo films. But and I think that's part of the reason why so many of these found footage films ended up being just not very interesting. I remember watching Paranormal Activity, and it's so hard wanted to be the Blair Witch, the new Blair Witch, and it was just utterly uncaptivating. It didn't feel anything original in it. It wasn't interesting. It was almost deliberately bad in so many ways. Whereas the Blair Witch, although most of the story about the Blair Witch had come out before I watched it at the cinema, but I quite enjoyed it at the cinema. I won't say it was the most exciting film I've ever watched, but you had to really kind of like buy into the movie, make that conscious decision to let the movie sort of speak to you and work with you. If you know what I mean. Sounds a bit hippie, but you have to be quite generous with the movie. But when you were, it was quite rewarding. A lot of people had a problem with the kind of, the way the film was done, because it's obviously not cinematic. So they struggled with the rough editing and the kind of moving camera, handheld cameras, and all that kind of stuff, which I fully understood. But I thought it was an interesting film nonetheless. Night, Simon. Oh dear, I'm actually quite awake now, which is surprising, considering a couple of days I've just had. Oh dear. Original Blair Witch it's great. It's a very interesting film, but I only struggle to call it great in that it's a film that a lot of people really just can't open themselves up to. So it has a very limited audience, but it was a fantastically interesting premise for how to make a movie. Not utterly not the first film to ever do that kind of stuff, but certainly the first film that really went all in with that kind of thing. Well, and present itself as a movie. Blair Witch 2, a lot of people struggled with the Blair Witch 2. For me, it was more a case of I can see why they made a lot of the decisions that they made with that film, and I can respect it for that. It was an interesting enough film in that kind of respect. But a lot of people didn't take well to it because it kind of changes things up in a way that they weren't expecting. Although what people were expecting, I got no idea. And just to shit out another Blair Witch would have been, kind of pointless. Particularly because, a lot of the power of the original one was that it fooled a lot of people because they weren't expecting that kind of filmmaking. It kind of ruined, found footage filmmaking for almost everyone that tried to follow, because once you lose that this movie is real kind of vibe, then it's gone, and you end up with just a cheap film that's badly made. And that's, Paranormal Activity really did suffer in that respect for me. How that film went on and on and on, with the only excuse that you can have is that your first one was popular enough to drag people back, but they were cheap enough that to make that it was almost a given that they would keep making money. Evil Dead remake is okay too. I don't mind the remake. I thought it tried to do certain things differently enough, and that's one of the things I was talking about. The Suspiria remake with somebody I used to work with. He says, "Well, what did you think of it?" I says, "I liked it. I liked the fact that it takes the thread of the original story and then does its own thing with it. It says it was sufficiently different to allow it to be interesting. Not everybody liked it. A lot of people found it slow and boring, or somehow not as stylish as the original. The original was really kind of extreme in its style. The remake is a lot calmer in the kind of visual sort of style, but I still found it a very good film, just for different reasons. I think they're both worthy of existing, and the fact that they share the same title is fine by me in that kind of respect, because it is the same story. It's just the same story told differently. Talked to Joe Berlinger at a festival once about Blair Witch 2. The studio ruined for him with the re-edit, but I think he had good intentions. I have a soft spot for it. Yeah, there was interference with that particular movie. Yeah, I'm glad it exists, even if it's not a film I particularly like. And that's one of those things. It's like not so many people take that kind of attitude. There's plenty of films that I don't like in the slightest, but I am glad still exist, because they're trying to do something, interesting on their own terms. There's plenty of films I could say, yeah, the world wouldn't have been any the less without them. But okay. Okay, Kerry. Yeah. Thought the Suspiria remake was a bit too long. Some people did feel it was very slow paced, and that's the thing. That is one of the oddities with me when I watch films. I don't mind films that a lot of people would describe as boring, as long as it's trying to do something. It is a long film, maybe possibly a bit too long. But not egregiously so for me. Not ever going to approach the original, but I really like it. I think it's a film that you have to take on its own, on its own kind of values, merits, I should say. I really do think that is the case with that film. They're not particularly comparable, because they're told so differently. But I mean, the original is an amazing visual treat, but it's very narrow on story. The remake is much less of a visual treat, and is much more a piece of storytelling. So they kind of like weight things, and the film is weighted in different ways. They were like the film. I think Quarantine was a terrible mistake. I think I would have liked it more if they hadn't sold it off as a remake of Fantastic Wreck, victim of their own marketing. Yeah. Oh, Wreck was fine. Quarantine was just an Americanized version of it. So, that happens so often though. It's like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and stuff like that. And you sort of look at these things, you go, the only reason that they actually do it is because there's too many Americans who aren't willing to sit through a film with subtitles, which I think is, it's not to say that there's everyone in Britain that would do that either. Again, most Western film-going audiences in like England, like in the UK or in America in particular, are not willing to sit through a film with subtitles, and that's, in my opinion, a product of systematic studios' behaviour of dumbing down their audience over decades, making them expect less and less. As long as you're rattling those keys in their face, then the audience just keeps coming back. And that's a real shame. The UK was really bad for that, particularly because the censors were awful. Particularly in the early half of the 20th century, up until gone past the 80s. Well, up till about the 70s at the very least. The censors were very much against arthouse films that were kind of obscure and weird and challenging. And there's a quote from one censor that was like, I'm paraphrasing somewhat here, but this film was so obscure as to be to lack all meaning, and if it had any meaning, it was undoubtedly objectionable. So he said something along those lines, and that's kind of how the censors really had this attitude towards films that they didn't understand. They just approached them with great suspicion, and that really killed the arthouse kind of scene in Britain, which contributed to the dumbing down of the audiences and damaged the filmmaking industry. Bait. I've never heard of that one. Is it true, or are Americans used to being told that they don't like subtitles? It's just part of a cultural thing, particularly with, I think, in America, it's just like, subtitles. It's like, well, goddamn it, speak American, kind of thing. Particularly when you've got one of the most powerful movie industries in the world. You are likely, as an audience member, without being kind of like, educated into trying to appreciate the craft of filmmaking, are likely to kind of fall into the sort of Hollywood trap of, we'll serve you up any old shit and see if you like it, kind of thing. And and that's Hollywood for you. As far as I'm concerned, Hollywood needs to go away, and it needs to collapse and start again. Get rid of all the studios, start all over again. That won't happen, because all that'll happen is people like Jeff Bezos will end up buying most of the studios and doing kind of like making them all Amazon exclusives, which is always a little bit dubious. Hard to imagine Derek Jarman making Blue these days, but movie has some bangers in it. That is one of the positive ends of these digital platforms, is they have a little bit more freedom to be a bit more experimental and try different stuff. Be it Amazon or be it Netflix or Mubi or whoever, the ones that are producing are coming up with some more interesting stuff. Plus, they do have, the capacity, if they want, to be kind of like hosting a lot of different things. Biggest problem at the moment is copyright when it comes to these things, because these things come and go from even places like Amazon. You'll have a film up there, but then the rights will expire with Amazon, and then you won't be able to get hold of it anymore via their digital platform, because it's moved over to a different vendor, which is very, very tiresome. It wasn't really a big film. Glenn caught it on film 4 today. Yeah, I don't have television, so it's a bit of a slow film, but I did like it. Quite original. See, now I just said that, I don't have a television, so I don't get broadcast TV. I unplugged from that stuff somewhere around about 2005. So I've not owned a TV for other than kind of like, playing videos through or whatever like that, but I disabled it from being able to receive broadcasts. And I haven't missed it a day. Haven't missed it at all. And same with Netflix. The only reason I got Amazon Prime is because I get cheap delivery for the stuff that I buy from Amazon. If I was to unplug from Prime, I wouldn't really care that much, as long as I can get hold of the films and stuff. Occasionally it's useful. Occasionally you can only get a digital download or something like that because the DVD's not available, the Blu-ray's not available, or sometimes it's just the occasional rental. So I did watch the new Spider-Man film a few weeks ago. It was only a £5. And I went, yeah, fine, fuck it. I was bored, didn't want to spend 15 quid, and I didn't want to have to wait a couple of days to receive it. So on that occasion, yeah, I kind of went and just rented it. My general opinion on buying digital copies is only get them if you don't mind losing them. I don't have to worry so much with this other than, kind of a fire happening or something like that. But with digital stuff, it can go away. And I'm waiting for someone to get cancelled hard enough that Amazon sort of go, yeah, your account, you can fuck off. And somebody to lose their entire collection of movies. Because that is a distinct possibility. When you don't own stuff, when you're only licensing, or when you're only doing it by the graces of having an account with somebody, then you can be super cancelled. So real life stuff can be taken away from you. Corman distributing Bergman and Kurosawa in the USA. According to his biography, he said he knew there was a market for them, but they needed distribution and they couldn't get it. Yeah. And look, let's be absolutely brutally honest about it. When it comes to that kind of stuff, the big studios have an interest in people not watching that stuff. They're not about the art. They're about kind of like churning out stuff for consumption. You're not a viewer, you're a consumer. And old films are a problem for them because people, eventually sort of flock to the old films. The studios ain't going to make much money out of them. It's a trickle at best. So they constantly want you to be watching the new film. It's always got to be the new film. And that's why they do so many of these remakes and stuff like that. They're trying to refresh the kind of financial returns from these things. It's probably true of about 8 out of 10 remakes that you'll see, or kind of reimaginings and that kind of stuff. It's only occasional when the reimagining is actually done for artistic purposes, and the Suspiria one that we just mentioned is one of those films that is actually kind of it's a film that was not made as a cheap knockoff of the original. So and it's very clear that the people that were making it had a vision with that film. They wanted to say something with that film. They wanted to do something different that's different enough with the same story. So I've got all the respect in the world for it. It absolutely should exist. Watched Irreversible for the first time recently. What a smack in the gut from Fire Extinguisher that was. Yeah, it's brutal, that scene. It's incredibly smartly made. It's a fascinating scene to break down. A fascinating film to break down. It has something of a conceit with the kind of design of how the scenes kind of, how the film progresses and that kind of stuff, and how the scenes are put together. Which a massive respect for. Not an easy film to sit through, though. It's a bit of a headache for that first 20 minutes, apart from anything else. No pun intended. Zero Boys looks good. I don't know that one. A sleazy 42nd Street cinemas in New York City showed Deep Throat alongside Pink Flamingos and Ingmar Bergman. Yeah. It's one of those things. For all the crapness of so many of these films that I've got, by kind of conventional standards, right? You got your Mardi Gras massacres, you got your Cannibal Ferox, Primitives, which is another one of my slightly guilty pleasures. I really did enjoy that film, though. There are so many of those films that are trying to do something. Not all of them. Some of them really are kind of, the definition of exploitation. They're there to drag a certain audience in on the promise of sex and violence. But you've got certain films in there, like let's have a look. saw it a little earlier, but it's not there anymore. Yeah, it ran away. Oh, there it is. There it is. Right. So you got a film like this, right? Massacre Mafia style, which is kind of a Godfather rip-off, to some degree. But it's a film that's made with a lot of passion. The guy that made this, Duke Mitchell, clearly had a passion for making films. It's not the best film out there. It's not the best made. But there's so much energy in this film. There's so much kind of interesting, exciting filmmaking going on within that film. And a lot of people just go, oh, it's sleazy, you know, it's this, it's that, it's the other. It's this piece of trash. I would put a film like that way above a lot of the stuff that comes out in the cinema, probably half the stuff that comes out in the cinema. As Last House on Dead End Street as well, you know, a film that is legendary for the kind of, like, you know, the stuff that sort of happened in the background. The making of the film is in some respects a lot more interesting than the film itself, but there's clearly some ideas and some playing around. It's another one of those films that can be so easily dismissed as being a pure product of exploitation that was just kicked out there with very little thought or care, and I don't think that's actually the case. Even if you believe the story that, you know, he blew most of the budget on drink and drugs and all that kind of stuff, and then just kind of shit out the movie, there's clearly ideas going on there. There's some fascinating filmmaking going on in there. It feels like Drill a Killer on acid. It's bizarre, but it's fascinating, and, you know, that's the thing. It's this imagination with a film like that. And I've always found that these cheap movies, often the less the budget, the more interesting they actually are when you kind of break it down. Yeah, they look like shit, but you know, the acting's not necessarily all that good. They're having to make do with the cheapest, nastiest costumes, props, and all that kind of stuff. But I love looking at these films and seeing how they work around those problems. I think low budget filmmaking is just intrinsically more interesting than a movie that has a multi-million budget, especially when you're talking about films that have, you know, 100 or 200 million or more. Those films, yes, they have problems and stuff to solve, but it's usually like, just throw more money at it and the problem kind of goes away kind of thing, and that's just not fascinating to me. It's not interesting to me. When I watch a film like Dawn of the Dead, and you see the ways they kind of worked their ways around problems and all that kind of stuff, because the budget wasn't, you know, huge, or Day of the Dead, or any number of those movies, seeing how they figured out the problems and worked their way around kind of like certain lack of budget and that kind of stuff, that's far more interesting, and usually ends up with better results. Day of the Dead, one of the examples I've given in the past, the whole kind of there was supposed to be a lot of kind of like above ground stuff, a lot more above ground stuff, but they had to cut that stuff out. There's supposed to be an above ground village and all that kind of stuff in the compound, and they had to cut it down and make it into just the bunker, and that kind of works so much better. I have read the screenplay for the uncut version of you know, George Romero's vision. And I have to say, I'm far more interested in the version that he actually came out with than the more full director's version that he had. And he was great at doing that sort of stuff. He was great at being able to sort of go, right, okay, let's just cut to the nub and take the best bits out that we need, just because he couldn't make it. What's the oldest format you have on the shelf? Do you have any beta? I do have a Betamax and I have VHS. That shelf there is full of VHS. just grab that one. So, there, Cannibal. My only... Oh, it's going to be interesting. There we go. And that's my only Betamax. It's teeny tiny. Totally agree, Glenn. Give me a low budget movie that's made with heart any day over expensive seat fillers. Yeah, you know, I mean, the thing is, there's no, there's a lack of adventurism with big budget stuff. Apart from the fact that they have to be demographically compatible, shall we say, they have to sell to the biggest audience. And this is leading to far bigger problems now, because now the market is having to expand to such a degree that we have to please China when you make a big movie. It's not to say that you shouldn't make a movie that is palatable in China, but it should not be your main goal that, oh, this has to pass the censors over there. And that's what it's about. It's about the government and the censors over there. Compromising films to a horrible extent. And Hollywood just going, yeah, we'll do that. You know. Star Wars, was it Force Awakens? Not Force Awakens, I think it was the last one. That they had... they were crowing on about, oh, there's a same-sex kiss in this movie. I mean, it's blurry in the background, all that kind of stuff, and they had to cut it out for China. And poor old John Boyega's treatment at the hands of the poster in China, where they kind of minimised him as much as possible. It's like, kind of, wow, okay, that's gonna sting. Chinese government's a little bit racist. Oh dear. Used to have DVDs, but I stream stuff online now. No physical media, really. Yeah, I wouldn't. I personally, I won't kind of ever get rid of this stuff if I can help it. If I have to get rid of this stuff, it's going to be with a gun to my head. I've done it once before. I had a few hundred VHS cassettes at one point, but as soon as I kind of moved to university, I had to get rid of a load. Some of which I regret. Not all of them, because not all of them were worth keeping, but some of them were. I did keep hold of a few. So I've got my Texas Chainsaw Massacre and a couple of other bits that I did keep hold of, but not many of them. I literally kept hold of about half a dozen. Used to have some Super 8. I would love to have some actual celluloid. Biggest problem for me is, I mean, I could go out and I could buy that stuff. I've got enough money to do that. But where do I show them? I've got a teeny tiny little place and I haven't exactly got a blank wall or anything to project on. Please, China, remove black people from the poster and cut the gay characters. Still act holier than now. Okay. Yeah, they do. They do. They're playing to different audiences. But the problem is, this communication is kind of global these days. We have this little thing called the internet. Oh, dear. I remember videotapes were very expensive back then. The most I ever paid for one was when Dawn of the Dead got its re-release on VHS. Sometime in the 90s. I think it was like early 90s. And I went down to the video store and it says, I'd like to buy a copy. And they kind of look through the catalogue and all that kind of stuff. And they go, right, okay, yeah, we get hold of it. We'll pre-order that for you. And it ended up taking about 6 months, I think, before I could actually get hold of it. But they charged 55 quid, I think it was, for the cassette. Bear in mind, like I say, this was like early 90s. So you can imagine what the inflation would be like these days. It was expensive. That was one of the things that's really hit people hard in the video nasties days, when there were Section 3ing a whole bunch of cassettes and stuff like that. The police would go in and would just take your video cassettes away from you. And bear in mind, a lot of the people that were video store owners at the time were people like ex-miners. You know, Maggie Thatcher had gotten rid of their jobs. They got a bit of a settlement for that. You know, they got a couple of months' wages or whatever. So they went out and they just bought video cassettes and started hiring them. There's a lot of cases of that kind of stuff. So then the police would just come along and go, yeah, we're taking your redundancy pay, essentially. Just walk in, yoink, 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 yoink. Walking out with bin bags full of cassettes. To say the least, it was kind of cuntish behaviour to say. I sold 100%, hundreds of VHS when I left uni to Glenn. Massive regret. I had an original Apocalypse Now without the titles. That is now gold dust. Oh no. Yeah, I think I got rid of a couple of fairly valuable ones at the time. Didn't know that at the time though. Bad experiences of getting rid of stuff, so hanging on to all physical media now. This is the thing. A lot of the physical media now, you know, you got a lot of DVDs and stuff, which is generally your kind of your Hollywood stuff, for instance. So you just bog standard Hollywood movies. You can't get anything for them really. But if you've got collector's editions, if you've got Arrow DVDs and stuff like that, you know, proper good quality releases, they hold their value reasonably well and do become very collectible. You see some of them getting resold for like, you know, 50, 60 quid and stuff like that, or more. Box sets of good quality are, you know, they just go up in price. So they're not entirely without value. It's only really kind of like the shitty Hollywood movies that just ain't worth now. Every newsagent corner shop had a spinning wheel of videos back then. Yes, I remember those shelves. Yeah, had to turn them very carefully because they might collapse, or cassettes would potentially fall off of them. I will always remember going past this little corner house on the way down to town, on the way to school, and seeing that poster for Driller Killer up there, and sort of furtively glancing over, going, you know, I'm not supposed to look at that kind of thing. Very eye-catching. Paid £25 for Terminator VHS before it was sold through. Used copies still have it. Yeah, I always liked the rental copies, the ex-rental copies. They were a bit more hammered, but you always got the much better boxes. I've long been meaning, because one of the ones I regretted getting rid of was the Day of the Dead VHS. Now the version that's on there is not that great, but I loved the box for it. Of course, I've got my 2 copies of Evil Speak over there, so I've got my pre and post cert versions. Post cert version is an absolutely kind of torn up mess as movies go. But the pre-cert one's kind of cool. The post-cert one's cool just because it has the little disclaimer on it. Yes, marathons, yes. And joining just to hire one film. Yeah, I remember it used to cost you money and all that kind of stuff, and you would get a laminated card and that kind of gubbins. And I just remember the wonder of walking into this place. It was called Trax. Was the biggest one in Melton. Walk into Trax Video. And it's just hundreds of films, and just the feeling of kind of going, I can watch a movie at home was such a cool thing. And just seeing all these films there that you got so much choice that you're almost completely baffled by the whole experience. I don't think there are many things around these days where anyone's going to experience anything quite as seismic as that in terms of home entertainment, things like that. And we had computers, videos, and then the internet. What's the next big thing? Is there going to be a next thing? It ain't going to be VR. My friend rented videos from boot of a car. The guy would post lists through people's doors. Yeah, they were all very innovative. See, that's the irony, though, isn't it, really? These were entrepreneurs, essentially. People trying to make their way in the world, make a living, hopefully make a good living. Everything that Thatcher allegedly would like, and then she stabbed him in the back. Fucked him over and set the police on him. I will never understand why anybody actually respected that woman. Just another government whore. My new news agents was my VHS deal. Yes, there was one just down the road from where I lived, about half a mile down the road. News agents, and then they converted their garage into a little video store. Do you remember hiring Evil Dead 2 from there, apart from anything else? Reanimator. Extra rentals aside for me one day so I can come in and have a look before anybody else. Yeah. I always like the extra rentals and stuff like that. Like I say, I mean, I love the big boxes. It's just, that's the sell-through ones at the, WH Smith's or whatever like that were never quite the same. The smaller boxes. I always loved the big boxes. Something more special about them. Had just enough technology, but not too much. It changed after the internet came about. Yeah. Any under the exhaust films. So people didn't give a crap back then, It's like you could go in. Generally speaking, they as the whole sort of nasty scare kind of kicked over and the police started getting involved and the government were legislating all that sort of stuff, then the companies kind of like had to start behaving. But it was a big market for it, and I tell you what, it's most of the movies that got kind of caught up in all of that really, were immortalised by it. Video recorder technology is still amazing now. Yes. Thatcher better than the Queen, or more like, oh god, Thatcher was scum in my opinion. There was barely anything that woman did that was that I honestly I think the further we go forward and the more we look back at people like Thatcher and Reagan, the less favourable they're going to be looked at. I think she was a pretty evil woman. And I don't say that often about anyone. But she's all about the rich and fuck the poor. Which is ironic, really, because she came from very humble beginnings, generally speaking, and she was not a stupid woman. I can't remember, was it biological chemistry or something like that she was qualified in? Something like that. So she was a smart, educated woman, but then just went off on that kind of bullshit. And I will always equate her with that photo of the miner just being about to get mowed down by a policeman on horseback. Oh, really? Is it? Okay. They always had a problem with House on the Edge of the Park. Mostly because of the ambiguity of certain scenes within it. You drew a caricature of Glenn just now. Uh-oh. Might be an appropriate juncture for me to recount again. A friend of mine was refused rental of Cannonball's Poison Blue because the shop owner thought it was a porn film. Brilliant. Thatcher, the Jungle Canyon Rope by Bridget Snatcher. She was grotesque. Isn't it amazing, though, people look back and try to rehabilitate certain people? So I don't think Thatcher's really been that rehabilitated, although there are, certain people who kind of sing her praises, which I think is pretty wrong. When you look at someone like George Bush, for instance, W. And the way that everybody's been trying to, so many people in politics have been trying to rehabilitate his image. You're going to go, first of all, the guy was a war criminal, engaged in an illegal war based on lies. He's got so much blood on his hands, it's unreal. And now, just because you like his company at dinners, we're supposed to kind of go, nah, he wasn't so bad. It's like, come on. I hate it when people do that with politicians. She wasn't favourably looked at the time. Certainly not towards the end. But she had enough supporters to keep her in power for a very long time. Maybe Thatcher believed she was doing good. I think she was looking out for herself and her buddies, and bloody well knew it. She was really kind of like hardcore into that Reaganomics style, free market stuff. But she was very much engaged in class warfare as well, on top of that. Who do you like more, Jimmy Savile and Margaret Thatcher? I'd have to say Jimmy Savile probably did. He did horrible, horrible things, but he did less damage than Margaret Thatcher did. Margaret Thatcher hurt a lot of people. I think, and bear in mind, she protected Jimmy Savile as well. Poll tax riots got rid of Thatcher. Amongst a few things, there was a whole bunch of stuff towards the end. Yeah, I wasn't sad to see her go. And her doing her teary-eyed goodbye. It was like, no, just fuck off, you witch. Look at recent attempts to rewrite Mary Whitehouse as a feminist trailblazer. Yeah. Mary Whitehouse was genuinely interesting. I think she was a heck of a lot more cynical than people realise. She was quite ambitious, but a genuinely interesting person, however you feel about her. I think a lot of her lackeys, the ones that kind of followed her, were a lot more anodyne than she was. That's right. Yeah, Blue Iris. That did happen. Probably should have left him out there. Savile was the morally superior one. Look at his charities. Savile was a monster. The stuff he did. Jesus Christ. Absolutely amoral. Nasty. Abusive. All sorts of stuff. But I would when it comes to body count, I think Margaret Thatcher is probably literal body count. Margaret Thatcher was responsible for a lot worse, and she's the one that really kind of like started the whole kind of like trying to get rid of the NHS and to privatise all national assets and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, did we see any of that money? Fuck no, we didn't. As far as I know, Savile never killed anyone. Not as far as I know, but he probably did, indirectly. I know there's that rumour that he was fiddling with already dead things. Mary Whitehouse possibly did the most damage to this country of any civilian. Yeah. I think she was more an irritant than anything. She did kind of, obviously, the Video Recordings Act was one of the things that she did manage to achieve, but yeah, certainly in the short term, it caused a lot more damage. But it's not irrecoverable, if you know what I mean. Because going back to the 80s, hope you got your Stonewall jeans on. No. No, I haven't. I don't think we'll ever find out the depths. Savile sank to even... bloody hell, I jumped. Even a new documentary about him didn't really go into what he got away with. It's very hard to talk about some of the stuff he did. I think if somebody was to write a really kind of in-depth book, that would be one thing. But I do wonder if there's any kind of like residual kind of resistance to actually kind of knowing the full truth about him. God, my back hurts. Bent over that goddamn mic all day. Who's the worst between Trump, Thatcher and Savile? Depends what you're looking at. I think generally speaking Thatcher did a lot more damage than either of them, generally speaking. Don't get me wrong, as far as I'm concerned Trump is a pretty grotesque person, but he sat on his ass and tried to kind of like maintain the status quo for most of the time. He just ran as a bog standard Republican for the most part. I think it's David Sullivan who named the porn mag Whitehouse just to piss her off, yes. God, yeah. Amazes me if there's any porn mags still around, to be honest with you, because let's face it, you can get it bigger and better and for free on the internet. Oh dear, oh dear. You're a fan of Whitehouse, the band. Now, Mary Whitehouse, yeah, like I say, an interesting person. There was a book, I think it's Letters from Mary Whitehouse, I think it was called. See if I can find it. Ban This Filth, the book's called. Letters from the Mary Whitehouse archive, which is a genuinely interesting book, and it's not sat there being incredibly judgmental about her, which is actually kind of makes it for an interesting read. It's not going, oh, she's just a busybody, da 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 da. It actually sort of goes into a lot of her kind of thought process via the letters that she sent and all that kind of stuff, and how people even within her circle were kind of reacting to her and interacting with her. So it's a fascinating story, and you come away with the impression that she was incredibly ambitious apart from anything else. It wasn't just about morality with her. She was on a mission for one reason or another, but I think she liked the attention. Apart from anything else. I think prisons are keeping the porn mag industry in business, really. Okay. Porn mags in my day, bush treasure in several ways, yes. Ah, dear. See, it's a shockingly common thing, isn't it? It's like, there's always some place in town where there'd just be porn mags kind of disposed of. There was a book called Ban This Filth, yeah. Yeah, it's worth a read, and I don't think it's not like massively expensive or anything. But if you're interested in the whole kind of story about one of the most important players in that, then it's definitely worth a watch. Funny enough, it's like a lot more interesting than the guy that actually kind of pushed this thing through was Graham Bright, who basically generally is a very, very, very boring person who wanted to make his mark, and eventually did. To be fair, he did make his mark. His story is really kind of interesting in terms of the journey that he took, and the fact that Sweden was kind of like the real origins of the video nasty scare. It's almost like he just picked up the list of offending films from Sweden and just brought it over here. But it's amazing. You don't tend to think of Sweden as being particularly censorious, but they were in some respects. It's just certain types of films that they would kind of be very liberal on. But that's not really any different with the BBFC, be it Trevelyan or Murphy or Furman. They all kind of had their little areas of liberalism. Furman was, for instance, particularly liberal when it came to sex in movies, as long as it wasn't, done for exploitative reasons. He was actually kind of allowing a lot of sex, including actual kind of penetrative sex on camera, that kind of stuff, into movies as long as the context was there. He just did not like exploitation. Be right back. Mo beer. Be very slow. That's only my first bottle. Been going for a while now. 2 hours. Bloody hell. I have been rabbiting on. Not bad considering we started off with absolutely no idea what the fuck we were doing. Can't see Sweden being censorious considering it was a country where those dodgy sex education films and thriller were made. Funny enough, it's that example, Thriller. The hardcore version was quite controversial over there, as I understand it. But they didn't like violence in films particularly. Germany is an interesting country when it comes to censorship. That they are almost entirely allergic to any kind of violence in films. They really don't like that kind of stuff. So horror films and stuff like that have a hard time in Germany. Films like Dawn of the Dead, I don't know if it's still banned, but it was banned for the longest time. But you can have sex in German films, like not a problem. Probably some very, shall we say, spicy sex in those things. There's a reason why they have a reputation when it comes to porn. But when it comes to violence and that kind of stuff, and obviously any Nazi kind of imagery or kind of stuff like that has a particularly hard time. And it's not allowed unless it's under very, very, very specific kind of circumstances. But yeah, Sweden was quite censorious. Speaking of porn and horror, that new X film, not too bad. So I understand. I don't think it's available on Amazon or anything at the moment, is it? Just check that. This is one of the advantages of the digital stuff. Is I'll never say that it's got no use whatsoever. Prime. There we go. Shall have to have a look in a little bit then. I don't think it's out on any digital streaming. Germany, unless it's historical ban on far-right imagery for obvious reasons. Yes, yeah. You can kind of understand it, but you also sort of go, you might be overreacting a little bit. But they really struggle with that. But violence in German films is kind of hard to pull off. Didn't Furman engage in depilatory cuts in Caligula? Yeah, Furman was one of the things that's most controversial about Furman is that he had a tendency to like to cut the films himself. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer being one of the big examples. But he'd be quite happy to sort of go in and just snip things up and go, okay, well, we'll submit it if you use this version that I've made for you. Some people have described him as a frustrated filmmaker, and I think there was a certain amount of that. Ah, dear. Along with 80s era, Christine Applegate from Married and Children. Okay, Married and Children. You've got 25 new movies added to your collection. Excellent. I've always liked Ty West since The Roost when he worked with Tim Noonan and Larry Fassenden. Yeah, I mean, this new X film, yeah. I've heard a lot about it, so eventually I will get around to watching it as soon as I can either get it on DVD, Blu-ray, or I'll rent it on digital, something like that. And if I like it, I'll make sure I get it on Blu-ray. Because I'm all about my physical collection of movies. Literally watched Henry for the first time yesterday. Very dark movie. Yes, it is a very dark movie. Incredibly depressing. But it's got that whole kind of vibe, the same sort of vibe as Abel Ferreira's movies. Early movies particularly. Driller Killer, things like that. It's one of those films that you watch and you feel dirty watching it. It's really quite unpleasant. It's supposed to be. But the fact that Furman thought that he was justified in sort of going in and kind of messing around with that film, that he knew better than the filmmakers, showed his kind of arrogance. Furman and Winner were school chums. Winner often said that Furman was frustrated, wanted to be a filmmaker. Yes. My friend's dad was in the office with talking to Furman. I don't know what it was about that they were talking about, but apparently Winner burst into the room, started yelling at Furman. That would have been quite a sight. I think it was something to do with one of the Death Wish movies at the time that he was yelling about. Henry does have an Abel Ferreira film. It kind of does, yeah. In it's that really kind of grimy sort of. It's like you got your nose in the gutter, kind of feel to it. It's a really uncomfortable film. But it's like with Driller Killer. That film. You can kind of understand to some degree why people, censors had a problem with it, because it feels a lot worse than it actually is. It was mostly caught up because of that cover image. It was on the poster, the one that attracted my attention as a kid to the video store window. Mostly it was that. But sitting down and watching that film is a very, very deeply uncomfortable kind of feel. It feels oppressive. Everything about it. It's a window into the mind of Reno, the character. So everything that he sees is just depressed and dirty and harsh and violent. And that's the way this world that he exists in is presented to us, exactly how he sees it. It's kind of fascinating in that respect. But when you look at it, when you actually look at the film, kind of like, cold light of day, break down what the film's actually kind of like showing you, there's not that much there. Texas Chainsaw had the same issue. Because they tried to cut it. It's like they tried to cut it to give it a certificate. They were like, "There's nothing we can cut. The whole film's just saturated with this feeling." And there was a few films like that. It wasn't so much what was shown, but it was the tone of the film, if you like. Everything about it, although it wasn't particularly explicit, just feels utterly awful. Yeah, I mean, Texas Chainsaw, it doesn't have hardly any blood in it whatsoever. But it feels a lot more brutal than it actually is. When it made a few good films, it seemed to be a massive tool to a lot of people. Yeah, it could be, apparently. He wasn't treated particularly well as a filmmaker. Some of his stuff is great, some of his stuff is bloody awful. A lot of his stuff was bloody awful. John would disagree with me, he's quite a fan. But I think Winner's earlier stuff was the best stuff, and as he went on, it just kind of... Well, he got stuck in a rut making lots and lots of Death Wish movies, and if you've ever watched all of the Death Wish movies, they don't get better as they go along. Your description of Gorilla Killer reminds me of the Austrian film Angst. Possibly the film most puts you in the shoes of a psychopath. Yeah, I'd like it's what I've always coined the term as psychological take. When the world is, and a lot of films do have that. You almost always have, well, very often at the very least, have the point of view character. So the world is kind of like shaped by their perception of the world around them. Even in a kind of, subtle way in some respects. And then, a film like Possession, for instance, is it's absolutely kind of like balls deep in the central character, Sam Neill's character's psychological view of the world, which explains a lot of what goes on with the weird shit that goes on in that film, the freak out in the in the underpass, the fucking the octopus, that kind of stuff. They're not literal. They it's not supposed to be realistic. This is not actually what's going on. This is like a highly coloured, emotionally charged sort of case of Sam Neill's character, almost, well, being the narrator, and this is his story. This is how he'd tell it, with all the hyperbole that comes with someone who's not in a sane position, or at least not a very healthy position. What are enduring memories of video shop when your endearing memories of video shop window shopping? Remember Snuff and Nightmare in Hamstring? I think the biggest one was always the Driller Killer poster. However, I do remember my first time walking into a video store. It made that much of an impression on me. Going into Tracks and walking upstairs. It is, by today's standards, it would be quite small, but at that time, it's just over 1,000 films in here. Where do you start? All these bright colours, kind of here, there, and everywhere, and having the opportunity of going, because we never had that before. You couldn't. You had a choice of TV or cinema, generally speaking. So cinema was just going to show whatever the hell, was released at this time. Although they did a lot more kind of repeat showings of the whole kind of rep cinema sort of stuff. So Star Wars would come back every so often or something like that, which is kind of fun. But you didn't generally really get to choose what you were going to watch. TV, you had to wait 2 years for a current film to maybe turn up, and then it's likely to be a cut version. Walking into a video store, you kind of just saw all these things, and you could make a choice out of thousands of films, hundreds or thousands. That's what sticks with me about that time. I do remember picking up a Nightmare on Elm Street standee, though. They had marketing for it, so it was a Freddy Krueger standee. And I said to the video store person, "Can I have that when you're done with it?" He went, yeah, you can have it. We'll just put your name on the back. So a couple of months later, when they kind of rang up and said, "Yeah, do you want to come pick it up?" And I did. And I had Freddy Krueger standee in my room, in my bedroom. Which is great. You wake up in the middle of the night and there's Freddy going, "Ah." Probably informed a lot of my film taste these days. Ah, dear. Though Abel Ferreira did get a decent performance out of Madonna, possibly her best actor. Yeah. Madonna's patchy at best. I think she was just occasionally lucky and they got a piece that would actually suit her personality. First Death Wish is the best. Personally find 2, 3 and 4 fine to watch as action movies. 5 is just terrible. Haven't seen the remake. No, I haven't seen the remake and I can't really be asked to. But yeah, it just gets worse as it goes on. Second one was fine. Was a good enough film. Third one, camp as hell but kind of entertaining. Fourth one, getting really quite tired. Fifth one was just like, oh my god. It was pretty bad but kind of fun. I would say that, you know, every one of them's got an entertainment factor to them, if nothing else. At school there's a rumour that there was a release with an orange label and a red one. Original one was supposed to be a uncut one. There was a few films that were kind of around in double cuts. Absurd being one of them. The Burning. There was a few others as well. But the game was to try and find the uncut ones. And try and hide them from the cops, obviously. Death Wish sequels have the wonderful tarnish of canon too. Yes, they do. A lot of people have asked me, you know, what do you think of canon films? And I'm kind of like, I've never really sort of got into them as a genre, if you like. It's almost a genre, canon film. Some of them I like, some of them I don't. I tend to look at the films on their individual basis. Ferrero's sort of 1 in a million. His films mean so much to me. Bad Lieutenant, really killer, really movies that offer you an experience for better or worse. Bad Lieutenant poster, for me, it felt forbidden. Yes. Because I had that whole kind of thing. I mean, you know, some people might find there's material in this film that people will find offensive and all that kind of stuff. I mean, mostly that's kind of talking about Harvey Keitel kind of whacking it off to the prostitutes in the car. Which is a distinctly ugly scene, to say the least. You had a canon cinema where you grew up even as a kid. And I knew an era had ended when it closed. Yeah, cinemas have become, you know, you blame the multiplexes for the most part, that kind of thing. I think multiplexes were the beginning of the end for the cinema experience. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. No, there was 2 versions in this country actually. I have the. I'll show you. Again. Right. So, apparently, Simon, Dark Angel, does have the other version. But that's the uncensored version, right? But there is a censored version as well. And I think it's missing a few seconds, and that's about it. Size of the video box helped sell the movie with the cover art on it. Yes, it did. Yeah, it was. That was why they had the full size kind of rental box versions. That was the whole point of the big boxes. That's why they didn't sell them through the, you know, kind of like sell-through versions that you get in the shops and stuff like that. thriller, A Cruel Picture. I found that a very odd film in some respects. It's not as exciting as I thought it would be. It's incredibly. The interesting thing is about she takes her damn time to get her revenge. And it like literally takes her years. Like schoolroom is a death night at the local fairground. We were told that if we turned up and signed a piece of paper, we could ride all the rides for free. We died if it wasn't. Bit annoying at the end with the slow-mo. Yeah, it's kind of overkill on that slow-mo, isn't it? Did anyone remember Toby Hooper's 2000 remakes of Video Nasty Toolbox Murders? No, I haven't seen that. And to be honest, a lot of people really, really kind of like give Toby Hooper a lot more slack than perhaps I would have done. He made a few pretty good films, most of them really early in his career. I think his masterpiece, if anything, was, of course, the original. I'm not as big a fan of the second one, and then obviously he wasn't involved with the other ones after that. But that was some really inventive filmmaking, very powerful filmmaking as well. When he did like the sequel and he had more budget and all that kind of stuff, he tended to get a bit self-indulgent. Not to say that I think he's a bad filmmaker, but I think he peaked very early. Excuse me. Christine Lindbergh is a patient woman. What can I say? Yes, she is. She really does take her damn time, and that's actually one of the interesting things about it. She takes her damn time about getting revenge. She ain't forgetting, but she'll do what she needs to do to get by until she's in a position. She's like literally going for like kind of like shooting courses or whatever, that kind of stuff. Goes training and all that kind of thing. There's not even a montage. It's like, okay, like Monday she goes off to this thing, Wednesday she goes off to this thing, Friday she goes off to this thing. 5 years later, when she's fit and able to shoot straight, she starts kind of then sort of gathering weapons and shit like that. It's a very odd film in that sort of respect. Now there's the two versions of that film, but like I said, one with some hardcore porn in it. I say porn, hardcore sex scenes. I don't think it's much more than 30 seconds a minute or whatever. I don't think it's like kind of full on, but I've never really been that driven to see that. I mean, it's not her for one thing. It's stunt double, shall we say, from what I understand. But yeah. Big fan of the theatricality of Hooper's later movies like Dangerous Tonight and Mortuary. He created great moodies, lighting and use of gels. Yeah, he had that kind of thing. Maybe, I don't know, I was ever convinced by the more wild lighting that he used. It never felt as full of depth as, say, Dario Argento's use of primary colours and that kind of stuff. There's almost just not quite the. Maybe that's down partly to because with Suspiria and I think with the other movies in that trilogy, like Inferno. Certainly with Suspiria, he used the 3-strip method apparently, which allows you to kind of control the primary colours, which means that you can make the reds and the greens and the blues a lot more vibrant. And I don't think Toby Hooper would have done that. So the saturation of colour in Dario Argento's films is much, much higher than it is in Toby Hooper's stuff, where they probably did colour timing, just regular colour timing for for Toby Hooper's stuff, and it always felt a bit more muddy. But there's a whole kind of comic book sort of thing going on with Toby Hooper's stuff, which sometimes worked and other times not quite so much for me. It's fairly hardcore, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I've got plenty of films that have hardcore stuff going on. The Lars von Trier's films, so every other one has a real cock going into pussy. It's like kind of a big thing with him. I've got 2 versions of Nymphomaniac up there. I've got the original theatrical version and the more kind of like the director's cut as well. Stunt buffs. Are they what is called after Life of Brian Judith? Yeah. Stunt buffs were used in Lars von Trier's Nymphomaniac 1 and the Idiots, which is actually it was Dogma film, Dogma 95 film. Number 2, I believe it was. So Lars von Trier's The Idiots has a gangbang scene in it, and one of the things about Dogma was they're not supposed to have what they call superfluous action, which means if they fight, they are actually supposed to make contact and actually fight. Any characters in that. So there's no stage fighting. You can't shoot someone in a Dogma film. If you go by the law. And, you can't have a sex scene unless they're actually having sex. So he had to kind of, in his vow of chastity at the end of this thing, explain that they had to have, shall we say, stunt doubles for the sex scene, because there's an actual penetration scene shot in that. She get nut back. I think I'll give it a miss. I did have the director get in touch. I say get in touch with me, commented on something I mentioned somewhere. I can't remember if it was on one of the videos or not. Merkins, that's the word. Merkins are just pubic wigs. I think Von Trier's best film was Breaking the Waves. It worked best. I like a lot of his films. They take a bit of watching though, if you know what I mean. They're not the sort of film that you go, I'm right in the mood for some Lars von Trier. Sometimes you sort of have to kind of go out your way and watch them, but I think his stuff is genuinely quite interesting. Some people really kind of try to dismiss him as being just entirely cynical. I think there's an element of that to his stuff, but I think he is genuinely trying to make interesting films. I don't think he's just trying to push buttons, at least not for the sake of it. Dario Argento was a Christian, and it made me wonder about supporting his work. May have to stop watching Eating Alive too if Hooper was influenced by Argento. I don't know what. No, I'm pretty sure he would be Catholic. Apart from anything else, not that matters. It's not really something that he explores as an argument in any of his movies. I think if you want kind of obnoxious Christian films, then Last Temptation of Christ, or as I like to call it, the greatest exploitation ever made. Little play on words there. My favourite Von Trier film is Five Obstructions. It really shows how talented he truly is. He is hit and miss, but when he hits it, he knocks it out of the park. Yeah. I mean, it's like Nymphomaniac. It's one of those films that I think is probably a miss. It has some ideas that don't quite pan out. At least I don't think they do. The House that Jack Built is a much more successful film. The Idiots is an interesting one. Melancholia is a really great film. Antichrist, I think, is a fascinating film. I appreciate every one of his films that I've seen, even if I didn't necessarily enjoy it. But Breaking the Waves I haven't seen, and I've really got to see it. I keep meaning to. I think it might be in the library at work, actually. If not bad Christian movies, just look at what Kirk Cameron and Kevin Sorbo are churning out these days. Oh god, pure flicks type stuff, yeah. Yeah. And pure flicks, I believe, are actually like a branch of the Asylum, so make that what you will. Oh man, I mean seriously, it's like somebody took a YouTube kind of a look at YouTube and decided to make a movie. When it's stuff like God's Not Dead and stuff like that, which is a famously bad film. But you can get some good Christian movies. There are really good kind of stories which are faith-based in one way or another, that are actually genuinely interesting. But yeah, Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas. Oh Jesus, yeah, bad. Kirk Cameron is a hack, to say the least. But he is mildly entertaining. And I have to say, he's not as doesn't come across as being as absolutely brutally hateful as someone like Kent Hovind. Oh God, what's his other one? Just recently, he's a newer guy. Although I think he's just deleted his channel. Who was Christ Righteous. What an obnoxious little prick that guy seems to be. Comes across as that super arrogant. It's quite fun watching Logic take him to pieces, because he's just released a book and it's like, oh my god, it's like apparently it's about 80% bloody plagiarism. Kevin Sorbo will always be the captain of the Andromeda for me. Love that show. It is always a shame when you get these actors that are in something that you like that they turn out to be kind of pricks. Some I can like forgive and go, yeah, I'll just enjoy your work as best as I can. You know, the stuff that I loved. And obviously it just indelibly colours kind of like how much you can enjoy it. It's an interesting phenomenon, you know, when it is that you can separate the artist from the art. Although God's Not Dead is not art. It seriously isn't. It's awful. Funny thing about Kirk Cameron was his reaction to the bad reception of Saving Christmas. He put on a show for it, I will give him that much. Yeah. See, Ray Comfort, who's his kind of like buddy, as much of a prick as he can be about certain things, is a kind of entertaining guy. I can't hate the guy. He did do a bunch of copyright sort of stuff, but then he kind of like stopped doing it and apologised for it. I'm happy to forgive. I don't need to be a Christian to forgive. But yeah, it's more the Kent Hovinds of the world. Oh God, that guy's such a prick. In all seriousness, though, it's been reported Argento won't visit certain parts of the country for fear of witches. Really? I did not know that. So I've never really kind of like got much of a sense of religion with his films. Not in a kind of like this film is influenced by my beliefs, yada yada yada, all that kind of stuff. His stuff has always been kind of like, you know, very much like Edgar Allan Poe, that kind of stuff. That's where it sort of stems from. But I've never really kind of like caught too much of his religious, even if he kind of intends to include that kind of stuff in. It's not always the case that filmmakers' beliefs get shoved in there. Behold the atheist nightmare, yeah, the banana. That's the word Ray Comfort, the banana man. He is funny as fuck. And Shoot the Spirit and its pseudo sequels, he had lots of crosses in his room. Sword Priest, a lot for protection. Did not know that. See, with Argento's movies, although there's kind of elements of the supernatural and by extension a certain amount of religion would be implied within that kind of stuff. It's never felt like it's more like it's an exploration of those things on a theological kind of basis or supernatural kind of basis in terms of religious kind of concerns. But it's very clear that he has, some intense fear of that kind of stuff. And that intensity sort of comes through in the film and the story, the writing. But yeah. It's not stated openly, but reported by people he worked with. Yeah. I think he does. I mean, there's this thing about his work, particularly the early work, maybe not the later stuff. That a lot of the stuff is personal fears. I think it'd be very hard to really kind of like do the sort of stuff that he does that without having that sort of personal attachment to some of that stuff. Funny to see a seemingly devout Catholic make gleefully violent movies. Not really. I mean, some of the people that would make the most violent films and that kind of stuff are deeply religious. Like, go back to that example of the Last Temptation of Christ. Mel Gibson is a very hardcore religious person. So that film is brutal. Let's not make the mistake of thinking that just because it's a story about Jesus that it's going to kind of pull back on any punches. It is, people called it sadistic for a reason. No, I think that was entirely what he was intending. It was supposed to feel sadistic. Never read much about Argento, but he's always seemed to me to be a man who lives and breathes to cinema. Yeah. I think that's part of the reason why, when it came to the digital sort of stuff, and a lot of filmmakers had to translate to digital, apart from anything else, because despite even having big names, it was very hard for them to get the kind of budgets and stuff like that for doing film and things like that, and also experimental sort of side of it, like with David Lynch and Inland Empire, and filmmakers experimenting with different types of filmmaking and filmmaking equipment. They've got to have that love for it, because but I think they got left behind a little bit, and to some extent the experimenting with these kind of things, although I think Lynch was quite successful with Inland Empire, a lot of his fans wouldn't agree. I think Argento wasn't quite so successful with it. I think he struggled with it in the same way that a lot of filmmakers have when they've done that translation from working with celluloid to translating onto digital. Everything's different with digital. Quality of the picture, the grain, when you kind of got that like low res, low light kind of grain is very different to what you would get on even a fairly shitty kind of, or a very unresponsive kind of film stock. Even if you're kind of trying to get the same sort of lo-fi kind of look and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't feel the same when it's digital to what it does when it's celluloid. A lot of filmmakers had a hard time, I think, translating between the two. The way that it cuts is very different. The hardness of the image when it's digital is very, very different. Everything's got to be lit differently. Everything's kind of like got to be shot differently, framed differently, and that's been a very tough thing for people to translate. Even to this day, I mean, unless you've got shitloads of money, shooting on digital is a tricky prospect. It has a intrinsically different feel, and learning how to work with that feel is one of the things that I think Inland Empire was a good example of how to make it work, even if people didn't appreciate it at the time. I thought she was very critical of the church, that's for sure. Yes. So some filmmakers were very kind of like, strike back at the organised religion, that kind of stuff. Interestingly, though, you got people like George Romero, who was Catholic guy. I don't know how devout he was, but he was, he kind of like had enough respect for Catholicism that he spared the nun in Dawn of the Dead. I think Catholicism in general has been a very potent kind of presence in cinema in terms of how people kind of relate to it, be it Ken Russell's The Devil, be it The Exorcist. And the Catholic Church has been very involved with filmmaking as well. It's what a lot of people don't kind of necessarily realise, particularly in America. The MPAA is, an offshoot, at least partly created by, I think it was the Catholic League. They were very heavily involved, as I understand it, within the early MPAA. Whether they're still involved to much degree these days, I'm not quite sure, but I think they are. But then they're kind of like defending films like The Exorcist, a film that was incredibly controversial. So they're looking at a film like The Exorcist and going, it's a bit, it's extreme, but it's what we believe. At least parts of the Catholic Church were. So it's kind of interesting to see how these institutions get involved with filmmaking. Both on kind of like, censorship and actually sort of pushing these things. From what I know, Romero left the church. I don't know if he left it or if he just kind of like, just drifted away, if you know what I mean. Bit of a subtle difference there. There's a great 16mm shot film that came out a couple of years ago called Luz, German. I think it's on Amazon Prime in the UK too. Definitely some John Carpenter influence. Nice throwback. Yeah, let's have a quick look. Come on. Okay. There's a few with that. Okay. Leave that as that. But I'll have a quick check it out. Mention Alice, Sweet Alice again. Really was a film about Catholicism in 1960s New York. Was very true to the church's practices. Yeah, Catholicism has been a very, very heavy influence in films for many reasons. but not least because they were incredibly powerful in America. A lot of influence. Yeah. Romero plays a great priest in Martin, who loves his wine. Yes. A lot of Romero's films as well didn't feature much, if any, nudity. It was kind of like very brief, and Night of the Living Dead had a very brief scene of nudity. Dawn of the Dead had a very brief scene of nudity. But it's one of those things that a lot of people kind of like said he was very Catholic about all that kind of stuff. Didn't really focus on it too much, and he was very, very, very sparing in his movies. And some people kind of attributed it to that. Sunday's still a day of rest here in Spain. I sort of like that. Yes. No, I do like, that's one of the good things is we get a few bank holidays, if you like, and plus Sunday is generally kind of considered a day off, or you get paid more if you do want to work it. I think that's a good side effect of the religious kind of thing. Although, it's arguable, is it necessarily just a religious thing, or is it political as well? Are those two things the same? Yeah. Okie pokey. I think we'll have to call it a day there. But yeah, we had that was a good little chat, wasn't it? It's the best part of what will come in like 2 3/4 hours nearly. So yeah, we'll call it a day there. My throat's getting a bit tired and it is getting late. So I shall say thank you for joining. Apologies for no chat on the screen. I will try and get that sorted for next time. Hopefully I won't have to update my computer any time in the near future. So, at least not for a year or so at least. So I'll try and get that damn thing working, and then we'll be back up and running. But thank you for your patience, and apologies for the short notice tonight. I just thought, fuck it, let's do one. So Kerry's likely to be doing one next week. Not quite sure if I'll do one on the other day or something like that, but we will see. I've got a fairly short week this week, so I'm pretty sure I'll be able to do something. So yeah, thanks for joining, and I will see you next time. If you got any suggestions, you know where the Ramblaholics is. If you want to join the Ramblaholics, then you just friend me on Facebook and then just ask me to send you an invite, and then we'll do that. So for now, enjoy the rest of your weekend. If you've got the bank holiday Monday off, great. I haven't, unfortunately. But enjoy the rest of your weekend in whatever shape it will take. So take care, folks, and good night.